Well, hello, everyone. This is John Byrne with Poets&Quants. Welcome to Business Casual, our weekly podcast with my co-hosts, Caroline Diarte-Edwards and Maria Wick-Villa. Today, we have two guests. One I've known for a long time, who is a true pioneer in the field of MBA admissions consulting. That would be Linda Abraham, who founded Accepted.com. And you probably know because she has a full catalog of podcasts and other information out there. And then a past president of an organization that we're going to talk about called AIGAC, because it is the 20th anniversary of AIGAC. And let me just tell you what that acronym stands for, the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. And our past president and still member is Andrea Sperry. Welcome. So, Linda, you were there at the very beginning. You were one of four founders of this organization 20 years ago. And it was quite a different world back then, right?
Right.
So I know that at one point what the four of you did, and it was you, Ricardo Betty, Graham Richmond, and Max Duffy, one of the things that you four did was participate in a panel at the Graduate Management Admission Council's conference. And it was sort of a special event in a way because there were many in the audience who were admission officials at different business schools who were quite skeptical of the idea that there would be actual consultants helping applicants apply to their schools. What was the mood like back then?
Well, I remember thinking I was feeling like Daniel walking into Lion's Den, but I remember being nervous. I think the mood, there was a continuum. There were admissions officers who were quite friendly, treated us as fellow professionals. There were admissions officers who were skeptical and maybe concerned that we were not just advising or editing, that we were actually writing and maybe somehow injecting a lack of integrity into the process. And there were those who were absolutely hostile. It really ran the gamut. There was a continuum. And there had been press about companies that wrote essays at the time or in the couple of years preceding. And some of the concern was expressed, how can we, okay, I get it, that you four people try and advise and edit and practice admissions consulting ethically, but how can we, admissions officers, distinguish between companies that write essays for their clients and you guys?
Right. And what did you tell them?
It was a good question. And I think that the desire to have an organization that represented the industry and practice admissions consulting with ethics was really the genesis of AIGAC. So at that point, I don't know what I responded to them at that time with that concern, but I probably did say something like, would a professional organization with a dedicated code of ethics address your concern? And I think the answer was yes. And it was really from that meeting, that lunch, that AIGAC was born.
And you had, I think, an important role in drafting what was called the Principles of Good Practice, sort of the code of ethics.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember about putting that all together? Because that was core to gaining the respect and even the admiration and embrace of business schools.
I remember that I was involved in drafting it. Maybe I drew up the first draft and then everybody commented on it. It was something like that. It wasn't, I wasn't Thomas Jefferson writing the Declaration of Independence there. But I remember, obviously we wanted to have a set of ethics that allowed us to assist clients in bringing out their best selves. Okay. Part of that meant that we said explicitly in the Code of Ethics, we're not writing for them. We're not doing the work for them. We're not thinking for them, writing for them, or trying to create some kind of perfect applicant. At the same time, the other part of it, the Code of Ethics, was that we were going to work on the behalf of the client and put the client's interest first.
Right. And 20 years ago, how common was it for there to be admission consultants for MBA applicants?
It was increasingly common. I mean, I don't know what the percentages were or are for that matter, but the industry had been growing by 2006. I mean, I started accepted in 1994. And when I first started it, the common reaction was, "You're doing what? What kind of business are you starting?" Um, and by, late 2000s, I wasn't getting that anymore.
Right. And I think it's, generally assumed that a fairly high percentage, it could be over a third of applicants to the very top schools today use a consultant. No one knows absolutely for sure, but there's no real stats on this. But when you search around and you ask different people in the game, I'd say most would agree that it's about a third or more. And that doesn't mean that they are helped from soup to nuts, but at least at some part of the process, whether it be a mock interview or review of their essays or a more reflective session to help someone think about how they should present themselves. That's part of the whole picture. Now, Andrea, you've been a member of AIGAC for quite some time. You were a past
Mhm.
president. What makes the organization appeal to you?
Well, there's a number of things. I found AGAC back in 2009, I guess just after I had gotten started building a business. And the idea that there were professional colleagues who shared an interest in learning about not just the programs, but also the applicants and thinking about what are the needs of people industry wide? What are some of the questions or trends that people are seeing where we could really engage in a dialogue. So we got a chance to learn from schools. We also got a chance to share information with schools. We had done the applicant survey for a number of years, and that was sort of the early days of that. And I think, John, we've probably shared that information over the years, and you had covered that, which we really appreciated. But having information that was relevant that could be shared back and forth and having a dialogue was so important when you're really new to something. I
True.
think selfishly, the people that I got to meet in the early conferences, and Max and some of the other folks were the kind of people I wanted to learn from. And then increasingly over time, the type of folks I wanted to emulate by sharing information and knowledge with other people. And I think, if AGAC members heard about my experiences with health issues, it's incredible what a family that the organization has become. And as someone who sat on the governance committee and felt responsible for protecting the principles that Linda and the team developed early on, it's amazing how much people can adhere to business ethics and also have intense personal relationships with people who should be competitors. And yet, because the industry was growing and because of the nature of the relationships that people develop, that's really what it feels like. So when we have our conference every year, it feels a little bit more like a family reunion, welcoming new people than it does a traditional industry conference.
And Maria, now you're a member, and I often think that most of the members of AGAC are either solo practitioners or boutique firms that really want that sense of community. And if you're at a larger firm, you kind of have it inside. What makes Maria go to AGAC conferences?
Yeah, well, first of all, there's actually a broad swath of members of AGAC from solo practitioners to, I mean, Linda accepted.com, if one of the biggest, if not the biggest firm out there. So definitely, I think it really does run the entire spectrum because I think even if people work for a larger company, there's still, attending the conference does give them an opportunity to personally level up their own knowledge, and then they can go back to their organizations and share that. But there's definitely a sense of camaraderie, and I think as Andrea was talking about those bonds that we share, I think it's because in order to join the organization, because you commit to a certain level of business ethics, that does point to all of us having, at least on some core level, very similar values. And I think that those similar values are what allow us to then develop genuine friendships and to also, we can trust one another because I think we all sort of agree to a certain set of principles in running our business. And so that then allows us to then become friendlier, on the social level as well. But really the biggest benefit is just the education, there are several things that AIGAC offers. I think the two most valuable ones for me personally is our annual conference, which is hosted by a school or multiple schools every year. And admissions officers now attend these conferences. And it's not just that we're all sitting in a room passively listening as a speaker is up on a stage. I mean, we are interacting with admissions officers from different schools. I have learned and gleaned so much about nuances from different schools just from interacting with their admissions officers and figuring out like, okay, this is what Haas is looking for. Like, oh, this is what Stanford's really into this. And so it's helped me hone my craft very much. And then there's also a summer with the schools program where right before the round one deadlines start, the individual schools will do webinars with us to share with us like, okay, here's what's coming up. Here's a new major that we're offering. Here's what we're seeing in the market. What are you guys seeing in the market? And so I think it's really helped create also bonds with admissions officers as well. And actually, like I actually have a question for Linda. You know, you were describing how at first the admissions officers were so skeptical and downright hostile towards admissions consultants, but now they come and they join our conferences and you know, we'll you know, sometimes we'll eat with them and drink with them and sometimes have a really great time. What do you think, like, when did that tide turn? And what do you think were, you know, I'm sure it was I mean, it's a 20-year long process, but what do you think were like the main things that started kind of winning them over to us?
So I'm going to address your question, but I have to tell you, as you were talking about, I was thinking about our time at the conference when we were at the University of Michigan at Ross, and the dean of Ross, whose name at the moment I can't remember, was it
Richard
John's? Who?
Was it Richard Lyons?
No, he was
No,
at Berkeley.
Oh.
He was
He's
at
at
Berkeley.
Berkeley,
Haas, but he was a very youthful, athletic dean. John, I think he once climbed Mount Everest or something. I don't remember his name at the
The
moment.
alums of
I'm sure I know who you
Yep.
mean.
You know who I mean? Okay.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
picture him.
You can picture him too. Okay, so at some point somebody will remember his name. But he wasn't at Ross for very long, but one year we were there and he got up and he said, "I want you to know we consider you our partners in creating the leaders of the future." I practically jumped out of my chair, okay? And I remember after that particular session was over, I went to Max Duffy and I said, "Did you hear what he said? Did you hear what he said?" And she said, "Yeah, that was pretty amazing." So that was in terms of the evolution. I don't remember exactly what year that was, but that represented to me a real sea change from acceptance to you are our partners in choosing and creating the leaders of tomorrow.
Yeah, that was Scott DeRue.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Linda, I was thinking about a moment from 2013 that to me felt like the real turning point, which was the year we were at the conference in Philadelphia, and we had done the survey that year, and that's when it uncovered the number of people who had been asked to write their own recommendations. And we brought that information forward for a very open discussion and created, working alongside the admissions teams, created very specific principles around recommendations. And so that's one of the times that the formal principles of AIGAC changed to be very explicit about the fact that admissions consultants were not to play a role in writing recommendations, but also that we were to encourage applicants and to give them tools to help them navigate that really tough question when your boss comes to you and says, "Oh, I know I said I'd write a rec, but why don't you just do it for me?"
You read it also.
And it was, yeah, exactly. It was such a common experience at the time. And I think we'd be kidding ourselves if we said that it doesn't still happen today. But to a lesser degree, and part of it is because we actually created those guidelines alongside the admissions teams and then translated them into, I think, 15 different languages through the work of different AIGAC members. And that to me was always a pivotal moment because people were willing to put in the work to do the things that we might have been in a more unique position to do than the schools might have been in. And yet we were all aligned on something that was ethically incredibly important to people. So I think about the tenor of the discussions and the follow-on conversations that people had after that conference, really changing the way that that sense of trust, or the sort of the incoming belief that everyone was trying to do the right thing instead of perhaps something else.
Yeah. I think that was definitely one of the turning points. I think also the survey was a turning point, and that was actually Graham's initiative very much at the time.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
and n- I think when they started asking us for our input, and I don't remember the year, like, what do you see coming up with applicants? What are concerns? Um, that was another, and the survey was part of it, but it was the letter of recommendation thing. It was even at the conferences where the admissions committee members would they'd be like, well, they would ask us, they wanted to hear from us what we were hearing and experiencing. So it wasn't just that we were amplifying their message, they wanted our input as professionals and colleagues.
Yeah, I kind of missed the survey. I really enjoyed reporting on it year after year. And I hear that AGAC may, in fact, bring that survey back. So we'll
Yep.
see. Caroline, what's your take on AGAC?
Yeah, so I actually attended an AIGAC conference in Spain. I think it was in 2012. I remember meeting you there, Andrea. It was a great event. I met Max Duffy. So I was just making the switch at that point from INSEAD to starting Fortuna. So it was a great experience for me to meet other people in the industry and hear about their experiences. As well as, the content of the conference was great. Yeah, it's a wonderful organization. Since then, I haven't had the time to engage, to be honest. Just been so busy with Fortuna. We have quite a large team with lots of connections into the school, so haven't felt that it was as essential to keep going to the conferences. Although I'm sure I would have got a lot out of them had I been able to attend. So I think it's a great organization, and I think it's wonderful that you guys have invested so much time and effort over the years in making that happen.
So, Linda, let me ask you, what does a candidate get by hiring a member of the association?
They get a very highly knowledgeable, experienced mentor on their team as they're applying. Hopefully, they've never done this before. If they've done it before, they didn't do it in the optimal way, or they wouldn't be doing it again. So they can benefit from years of experience from an individual consultant. They can sometimes benefit from decades of experience if they're working with a consultancy that has many people involved. And from an AGAC member, they get people who can ask questions of colleagues outside their organization. So I think that's the principal benefit. A consultant can also save them time, and if they don't have to reapply, it can save them a lot of money too.
Now, Andrea, can you recall an example where your membership in AGAC helped a candidate of yours who you were having as a client?
Oh gosh. It happens all the time. I think one of the things that comes up, pretty popular topic with candidates, is trying to figure out their application strategy and how it relates to financing, for example, and what schools have what opportunities available for merit scholarships and what types of opportunities, and how do they think about putting a schedule together of schools that may consider additional funding opportunities for them if they have done certain things, and which ones might not. It saves them a ton of time and anguish. It comes up once people get accepted and they have different offers in hand, where they're trying to figure out what's the right choice for them and how are they going to navigate both what the programs have to offer. So there are lots of specifics we can give them from the engagement and interaction, but also how to approach the people at the school when you have an offer in hand, and perhaps one school is a better choice for you and another school gave you a substantial scholarship, right? And you're trying to figure out how to navigate that choice. Some schools, through their discussions, will make it really clear that they have no interest in engaging in that conversation, which is absolutely their prerogative. And other schools will be very open to that conversation. And that's something that will come up in a summer with the schools discussion or even at the conference where people are clear about their preferences on a number of different things where you can help a candidate to figure out how are they going to approach that situation.
Right. And just having access to a community of members who've had a lot of experience
Uh-huh.
in the marketplace at the moment that that candidate may be weighing an offer versus a school that may be a higher ranked school but isn't as generous with the scholarship money could be really helpful, obviously.
Yep.
Um,
Can I just add a little bit to my
yeah.
my answer? And that is just the educational opportunities that AIGAC provides its members. The conference, obviously, but also the summer with the schools, the seminars. Most admissions officers give their contact information so that if one of the members have a question, we can actually address the question to them. I remember a
Yep.
few times clients coming that said, I had an awful interview experience where the interviewer just was egregiously
Uh-huh.
bad. Okay, what do I do? Sometimes we'd run interference for the client. And the school was almost always appreciative. So again, it's not the experience, the education, the expertise of the consultant on the applicant side and as a guide and mentor is pretty important and valuable,
True.
not invaluable.
Yep. Are you surprised? Here we are 20 years later after you co-founded this organization. It's still around, still strong, still, still a great community. Linda?
Am I surprised?
Yeah.
Not that I was thinking 20 years hence at the time. I'm
Probably.
pleased. I'm certainly pleased. I don't think any of the four of us intended to founded it with the intention of having it flounder. So I'm not sure surprise is the right word, but I'm definitely pleased.
Right. Maria, any thoughts about the future of AIGAC since you are a current member?
No, I'm excited for what the future holds. I think that we are just continuing to build these relationships with these admissions officers in a way that is mutually beneficial, as alluded to previously. Like we give them heads up on all kinds of situations that they might not necessarily know because they don't have their ears to the ground quite so closely. And so I think, I'm excited for just continuing this synergistic relationship. And again, as consultants, because we visit all of the schools and we have met so many of these officers, we help people, or, our clients at the beginning of the process when they're trying to choose schools and then to apply to, and then help guide them as they are applying and then help choose schools once they do get in. Because there are certainly nuances, and I don't even know that I appreciated it, just how different some of these schools are until you actually go and you see the campus and you meet the admissions officers and you get just a vibe sometimes, but it can be very subtle at times. But wow, on paper, if you go to the website, so many of these MBA programs look exactly the same. All of their websites say the same thing about we're building leaders for the next century, and they all have the same majors and the same happy pictures of the happy students. But wow, when you go to that school and you meet the admissions officer, these nuances that can be really important come to light. And so I think that's something that AIGAC consultants and any experienced consultant, including the ones at Fortuna, of course, can offer in a day and age when I think a lot of people, somebody simply gets into a business school, they feel that makes them qualified to hang their shingle out and declare themselves an admissions consultant. That there's really so much more to it than that. And so I do think that, going with someone like an AIGAC consultant is a sign of quality. AIGAC doesn't just let anyone in. You need to meet certain requirements. And so if you are going to get guidance, which I think everyone benefits from, make sure that you're doing it with someone who's really experienced and who knows deeply this process.
Indeed. AIGAC will hold its 20th annual conference May 14th and 15th at Duke University. There'll be a visit to UNC's Keenan Flagler Business School. There are more than 200 consultants who are members of AIGAC. You can actually look them up in one place on either the AIGAC website or even in the Poets and Quants directory of MBA admission consultants, which incidentally has about 500 people advising MBA candidates on their journey to business school. So let me just thank Linda and congratulations. And Linda recently retired. She is a legendary MBA admissions consultant, one of the true pioneers and originals in the business. And Andrea, a past president of AIGAC, who I assume will be at Duke University in May, right?
Yeah,
There,
absolutely.
there you go. And Maria, are you going this year?
Yes, indeed. I am very excited. We Duke, all of the schools do a great job, but we were fortunate enough to be hosted by Duke a few years ago, and it was a wonderful time. The incomparable Sherry Hubert, whom I know, John, you are a huge fan of.
Yes.
Looking forward to seeing her again, and all of her amazing team, and also the great team at Keenan Flagler as well.
Indeed. And for all of you out there, let's all wish AIGAC a happy 20th anniversary. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Thanks for listening.